Welcome everyone to another episode of Vinny Makes the Hall of Fame Case for ... And I'm Kurt Buckner. I run NotInHallOfFame.com along with the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. Big news coming soon with that. But before we sort of go into that and talk about my co-host, actually the real host of the show, Vinny Lospinuso, the Whiz Kid, Vinny. You can actually Vin. When I called into your show, I'm listening over. There was Stump the Whiz. How do people get into that?
People get into it by DMing on Instagram or Twitter/X about whatever kind of question you want to ask them. Just try to DM the Sports Bash accounts for both.
Okay, what are those accounts for people to do that?
Sports Bash Media.
Oh, Sports Bash. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, that might not be a bad other separate show. Stump the Whiz. Maybe I can come up with a few things. See if I can sort of get you. But the other housekeeping that I really want to go to is, first off, Vinny does a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of local halls of fame. And one of the cases that you made recently that just went up on our YouTube channel is on Steven Jackson, the running back from the Rams. And you sent me a message that, because when we talked about that for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I wasn't really convinced on that one. I'm still not, but then the end of it was you said I have to get him in the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame, and apparently that happened. And
yeah, this was a huge effort that I did for like a whole year actually. This is in thanks in large part to Kenton Miller. He runs the St. Louis Rams history Twitter/X account. He said growing up, his favorite player was Steven Jackson, and made a lot of sense. Like I said on there, Steven Jackson, easy Rams all-time rushing yards leader. And when it came to the Rams, especially the latter half of their time in St. Louis, there wasn't really much to cheer for. But if there was any dark cloud, the silver lining was him. And that was a fact. And I didn't understand why he was not in the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. So I I told Kenton to send some emails, and I looked over all of them, told him to add all this stuff, like a lot of stuff upon a lot of stuff. Basically so much stuff where you had to overwhelm the hall to the point that says, okay, you know what, we have to do it. and so that's essentially what I did. I spoke with some of the people, spoke to Bob Underwood. I spoke to some of the people that also run, like Tim McNeil, I think is the other guy. And I just would retweet them, mention their name, show things of him, mention stats, shows. I did so much and guess what? Yesterday, Kenton just posted me and Steven Jackson's right there, which was fantastic. The fact that Steven Jackson, and it in a way, it kind of shows me too that, and this is what I say just in general, even if your team's no longer there, that doesn't mean you should just forget about that team's history. There's also other guys that made it in that class as well, like Ken Schrader, great NASCAR driver, though unfortunately for him, he's known as being the guy who made contact with Dale Earnhardt in his fatal collision. But, Schrader is a legend in St. Louis, and I think the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame does a great job at getting people that are very deserving from that region, whether they were from there or contributed there. And I'm not just saying that because Steven Jackson got inducted, thankfully, and he's going to be a headliner too. He's not just another guy. No, he's going to be one of, if not the headliner for a lot of people. And it should be an amazing event. It's going to be September 5th this year. Kenton told me he's going to be going to that. He's never been to any kind of Hall of Fame induction ceremony before, but he said that he is definitely going to go to this one. So I'm very, very happy for him. And I told him that you have to make sure you go because it would not be incomplete unless you were there for him. Because I even though I did make this happen, the idea for me to even do it was because of him, and I want to give him a lot of credit also.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to sort of like point that out here, and mostly because a lot of the times we're doing this show, whether maybe it's not sort of like there's not as many views on this as I'd like, but realistically, some of the people who are seeing it are influential. You've shown this case to relatives of people who are no longer with us and spoken with them, and it's one of the favorite series that I do on this whole thing on Not in Hall of Fame, only because I feel that you're making a difference, and I just want to point that out in some of the things that you have done. So now that I'm done licking your dick here,
Uh,
let's move on to who we're actually looking at. As we're recording this, usually this goes up maybe a month, 2 months after. This is actually very timely because the Boston Celtics last night, as we're recording this, won their 18th championship. They are now the winningest franchise in NBA, well, winningest in terms of championships in the NBA history. And I don't know if you had this in mind when you picked this, because you picked this a while ago. Uh, Casey Jones, someone who's already in the Basketball Hall of Fame as a player, and
yes.
very much like Jerry West, who you kind of think was already in as an executive. You kind of thought I did that because when you send me this list and it's like Casey Jones, dude, he's already in as a coach, and isn't he already in? And I already know not to question you because if you do that, but you go and check, it's like, oh my God, he's not in. Casey Jones, eight-time champion with Boston Celtics as a player, hell of a college player, uh,
Yeah, hell
Olympic.
of a college player, and a lot of people think of Casey Jones as, oh, he's one of the worst guys in the hall. No, I would
I don't think
push
that. Who
back.
thinks that?
Some people that like Julian and some other people that like that are subscribed to us. One people that, but and they
Really?
think, oh, he sucked because he had no all stars. I'm going to push very hard back on that for a few reasons. First off, Bill Russell. One could say that they were good because of Bill Russell. Bill Russell will be the first guy to tell you a big reason why they were so good defensively was because of Casey Jones. Not only that, Red Auerbach is on record many times for saying whenever Casey Jones was in the game, they'd be up by at least 10 points. And he played a huge role. And a big reason why he didn't have many all-star nods is because the Celtics were a very loaded team with a lot of great players. Again, it's not
Hmm?
just Bill Russell, but you also had Bob Cousy, you had Ed McCauley for a little bit. You had, like I said, Bill Russell. You had Frank Ramsey. You had John Havlicek. You had Sam Jones. You had Tom Heinsohn. You had you had a lot of phenomenal players throughout the entire dynasty. And you also have Satch Sanders was there. At the very end, you had JoJo White also. You had Bill Sharman. You had Bob Cousy. You had a lot of guys on those teams. A lot. Also, you had Don Nelson on that team, another Hall of Famer. You had a lot of legendary names on those teams, and yeah, not everyone from the Celtics is going to be an All Star. Not only that, the reason why it may look like his stats are kind of low is because he was mostly a defensive specialist. And during his time, I guarantee you, if they had Defensive Player of the Year awards, he would have won at least one, if not two. And people on the Lakers or the Hawks, they would tell you the toughest guy defensively they had to go against was oftentimes Casey Jones. So that
Modern fans think of this as the equivalent of Michael Cooper, who
yes, he
got in.
is he is very similar to Michael Cooper in a way, in terms of his impact as a guard, as a defensive guard. He was like, think of Gary Payton without the All Star nods and without the DPOY. Like he is one of the greatest defensive guards of all time.
Mhm.
Casey.
Okay. Well, either way, I don't have a. I, you and I obviously do not have a problem with him as a player, but we're talking about him as a coach, and he went into coaching very quickly after he retired as a player. Uh, a lot of things I knew, some things I didn't. I didn't know that his first main coaching job was as an assistant at Harvard in 1970.
was not his first coaching job. It was second coaching job. His first job
First.
was as the coach for the Brandis Judges,
Yeah.
which is a which was a team for in Division 3 at Brandis University, which is over in Massachusetts. Like another thing I should mention for those
Yeah.
Celtics teams is that Auerbach's guys, they all became a lot of them became great coaches themselves. Like as I mentioned, Don Nelson. I mentioned,
Bill Russell.
Tom Heinsohn, Bill Russell. Yeah, you have also Frank Ramsey and Bill Sharman also too. Don't forget. Again, these Celtics guys would end up becoming phenomenal head coaches or assistant coaches in other places, and like
Yeah.
legendary ones at that too.
Well,
Um,
yeah, to your point, right? Like you always look at football coaching trees. They never say that for any other sport, but if you look at a basketball coaching tree for Red Auerbach, who obviously sort of like gave, he paid everything forward. So like all
mhm.
the people he's coaching, he's not just saying, look, he's not just telling you what to do, he's telling you why he's doing it, which is sort of like why he's the goat of coaches, because
Oh yeah.
he was not shy to sort of help everyone around. No, I didn't know that about KC, but already an assistant in 1971 with the Lakers, and I think that's sort of important. And again, we're two white guys who are talking about that, but reality was black assistant coaches were few and far between in the
Hmm.
NBA. And Casey was already that in 71, already had his first head coaching job in the ABA with Conquistadors of San Diego. And
Yeah, that was his first time as an NBA as a professional assistant. But he was also the year prior. He was an assistant for the Lakers. That same
yeah, I was
Lakers
saying
team.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, again, the Lakers team that won a championship as well. So was
Yeah, and I
also
think
pretty
yeah,
cool.
that's very true. And he replaced a legend, well, somebody who you've done a Hall of Fame case, or well, not so much a Hall of Fame case for. It was in our basketball, like a preliminary series, replacing Gene Shue with the Bullets.
Yeah, that's
So
another guy I think should be in the Hall of Fame also. And
was
he,
Jones I should have looked this up. I didn't. You're the whiz kid. You probably know this already. Was Casey Jones then the second black NBA coach?
he was definitely one of the top. I think he was definitely one of the first three. And
Okay.
when you're talking about him as a you're talking about him as a like a pioneer of blacks. Yeah, he was like that. Bill Russell was the but you can't forget Casey Jones played a huge role in that also.
Of
Like there's
course,
a
yeah.
lot of connection between those two and the families. I'll get to that later on, but it's also very, very close.
Mhm.
Close.
Yeah, and so on some good Bullets teams, then an assistant with Milwaukee, and then back to Boston in '78, would win another championship as an assistant
Hmm.
before he took over the reins in '83. Had that from '83 to '88 with Boston, winning two titles,
Going
uh,
to four of them, four in a row, um, with the Celtics.
four titles in a row.
No, four finals appearances in a
Oh,
row
four
with the
finals in a
Celtics.
row. Sorry, I missed that word there. So obviously like a huge. I mean, yeah, you've got a big three, but still, I mean, we've seen coaches with big threes. You still have to get them to work together, do everything cohesively. It's a lot of work, and I wonder if because like in after '88, he just sort of stepped down to be a consultant. Does this hurt him? I mean, like he later on became a consultant with Seattle, was their head coach for a bit. I mean, like clearly he's this legendary basketball mind behind the scenes. How does he slip through the cracks on
I
this?
think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, well, it's similar to why it took so long for Bill Russell to get in as a player and as a not player,
As
as
a
a
coach?
coach.
Yeah.
And the same reason as to why Jerry West, it took him a
Yeah.
while to make it as an. It's because when you're already put in once or even twice, sometimes it could be a little bit harder to get in as a second or third time. It
Mhm.
has happened before, obviously, but sometimes you want to give it a little bit of
But they
a
set
wait.
it. They set the precedent for the. Okay, yeah, you're right. A bit of a wait, but yeah, go on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, John Wooden is the first one to do it, and obviously there's been many others afterwards, and numerous ones for the Celtics. Like I mentioned Sharman, I mentioned
Yeah.
Heinz, and I mentioned Russell. Um, I think a lot of it with Casey Jones is because as a coach himself, he was phenomenal. I mean, every single year he was coach for an entire season, his teams made the playoffs. And he made 5 finals in 2 championships. By comparison, you look at other coaches, because he was named one of the top 15 coaches in NBA history and was also an all-star game head coach 5 times, which is third most all time. Granted, that's changed now with the Pat Riley rule, in which if you're like you can't be an all-star game head coach every single year or else. So if you have it 1 year, there's a break and you can get it again, like you can get it every other year. But still, like 5 years in a row is incredible. And but you look at like the other top 15 coaches, like you remember the NBA 75th anniversary team? Like that was the one where people were upset that Dwight Howard didn't make it. I would argue he was not the biggest snub from there. I would argue that John Cunliffe was the bigger snub, and they had Doc Rivers in there instead, which Doc is fine, but he wasn't John Cunliffe. But going for Casey Jones, when you compare him to other coaches on the top 15, his winning percentage was 674. The only two that are higher than him are Steve Kerr with 687 and Phil Jackson with 704. By comparison, one's below him, Greg Popovich, 667, Red Auerbach, 662, Pat Riley, 636, Jerry Sloan, 603, Chuck Daly, 539, Eric Spoelstra, 589 as well. Doc Rivers, 585, Don Nelson, 557, Larry Brown, 548, Lenny Wilkins, 536, Red Holzman, 535, and Jack Ramsey, 525.
Going back to that,
Also,
of the 15 greatest coaches, Jones is the only one not in who's not active. So that's
yeah.
Steve Kerr, Rivers, Eric Spoelstra, who's part of
Mhm.
that. Uh,
Yes.
so just putting another
Yeah.
point
Like
on
he's the only one that because Kerr, Rivers, and Spoelstra are active. Casey Jones, he's the only one that's missing out. And as soon as I saw that, I said, why is he not in the hall as a coach already? And so, this kind of came to my mind a little bit after he died on Christmas in 2020. And I decided to email the Hall of Fame like a few months ago about many names I want to see in. And I mentioned guys like Faust. I mentioned guys like, Casey Jones. I mentioned Mark Price and numerous other names, and Frank Lubin too, obviously. And I mentioned Casey Jones. It was when I saw Bijan Bain. He's a guy. He's a friend of mine. He's also a basketball historian. He actually commented to his daughter Bryna's Twitter account, and I said, "Oh my God, his kids are on social media." So I spoke with her a bit, and I said, "We got to get your dad in the hall as a coach." And we spoke to each other about it. We spoke like 2 hours on the phone about it, actually. And right now, Red Auerbach's family, Bill Russell's family, Sam Jones's family, Tom Heinsohn's family, many family members involved with the Celtics at that time who are still very, very close to this very day. And we're actually at the finals last night at the time we're recording and are actually speaking with the Celtics about it. They're going to try to do a statement on it down the line. The San Francisco Dons are also trying to get this through. Like, as a result of speaking with Bryna, now I have a system in place in which we're working behind the scenes to get KC in. We're trying to get 25 in the class of 25 as a coach.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so I think this has sort of been a really good one here to look at, very timely as we're recording this.
Mm-hmm.
Look for a lot of other shows that Vinny, or a lot of other cases rather, that Vinny has made. Also, check out something that he is a part of, the United States Athletics Hall of Fame, where he is one of the voting bodies for who we think should be nominated. It's all up to you at the end of the day. And we have some Olympians on that, a former seven-time Pro Bowler, a daughter of another NBA legend who played at Georgia Tech. So who Vinny sort of like helped bring to that table. So there's a lot of things that we're doing here at Not Hall of Fame, just to raise awareness and just sort of like have these fun bar discussions that we really enjoy. Uh, Vin, I don't always sort of like promote this. I should do this more often. Where can people find you on Twitter?
At Vin Lospinuso 91 on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook and I'm a little bit on Instagram, but not really that much. And you can see me on YouTube at Sports Bash Media, where I do my weekly show, not really, my daily show with Peter Schwartz and Vinny Greco every single morning at 9 o'clock Eastern time to 9:30 Eastern time. We're looking for more sponsors every single day. Please, please call in at 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. both Eastern time because we would love to have you on to speak, or you might even win a free ticket to go to a game in the New York City area. Yankees game, Mets game,
Unless I
Red Bulls
call in,
game.
I'm in Seattle. There
You can give it to, you can send it to someone else. I'm not gonna judge you.
you go. There you go. So wherever you are, wherever you may be, make today count because it never comes again. Talk to you soon.